In this series of 5 videos, I'm going to be showing you how to draw this flower with very basic supplies. The only supplies you need for this project are a 12-pack of colored pencils. I am using the Faber-Castell Classic colored pencils, but you can use Crayola or whatever other brand you prefer. In this first video, I'm going to explain what a highlight, midtone, and shadow are, and showing you 3 techniques you will want to be familiar with when doing this drawing. The first term I'm going to explain is the highlight. A highlight is simply put the lightest area seen in your reference photo. Next is the midtone, which is the color that is darker than the highlight but lighter than the shadow. In this case, it's orange. This leads me to my third term, the shadow. The shadow is just the darkest color seen in your reference photo. For this project, it's red. Now, one of the great things about colored pencils is that they mix well with each other, making it possible to make more colors from your existing colors. This can be a big change, like yellow and red making orange, or a subtle change, like this, where it only makes slight variations of those colors. A subtle change in color is called a gradient. Now let's get into 3 main techniques for applying and blending colored pencils. Now, these are not all the techniques out there, since more and more options are being made possible, but this will get you started and are all you need to complete this flower drawing later. The first technique is layering. This is by far the most time-consuming technique, since it requires many very light layers to achieve a nice transition. All you do when using this technique is to apply a layer of the lightest color first in the areas of a highlight. Then you add in your midtone color to your shadow areas. Now, once that is done, it's considered to be your base layer or undertone. Some things to avoid with your undertone are not using too much pressure, leaving out gradients, and or adding colors in patterned strokes, since you won't be able to add more layers and will be left with an almost cartoony appearance. Now, that being said, you have these next 3 options to add transitions and more saturation to your undertone. The first is to continue adding layers with the layering technique, just going back and forth from your light colors to your dark colors and vice versa. This can give you a very nice, soft appearance, but won't be as saturated as this next technique. Which is burnishing. This technique is quite similar to the layering technique in that you start with light layers of colors. However, the difference is that the more layers you add, the more pressure you use. This pushes the colors into each other, creating more transitions and saturation. That being said, you need plenty of layers and color on your paper, and they need to be close together for this to work. If you don't have these, you will be left with a very muddy and unblended result. If you avoid those mistakes, you will be rewarded with a much more polished and blended look in comparison to the layering technique. The third technique you can use is solvent. This starts the same as the burnishing technique, except that when it comes time to use more pressure, you apply solvent instead. This is great since you can avoid the pressure that comes with burnishing, since it is lightly applied with a brush instead. Solvent is not ideal for cardstock, so you won't be using it for this project, but if used on watercolor paper, it can give you a nice appearance that looks like a mix of both the layering and burnishing technique. One thing to note about solvent though is that there needs to be a lot of colored pencil on the paper for this to work. It's not like watercolor pencils where a little bit of pigment can spread and move on the paper. That is it for this video. In the next video, I will be showing you how to block in the mid-tone of this flower drawing. If you watch all 5 of these videos in this series, you can easily complete your own drawing of this flower. Until next time, God bless.